I'm leaving you for my boss. He's successful, unlike you. My name is Grant Holloway. At 45, I'd spent 15 years building a career as a financial advisor at Veltri Dynamics in Denver, Colorado. I specialized in high net worth portfolios, quiet, methodical work that most people, including my wife Melanie, found boring. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March. Melanie was supposedly at a pharmaceutical sales conference in Miami. I was in our kitchen reviewing client documents when my phone lit up with her name. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice oddly calm. "I'm not coming home." I set down my pen. "What's going on?" "I've met someone. It's been happening for a while." Her voice had that practiced quality she used with difficult clients. "It's Russell, my boss." I said nothing, just listened to her breathe through the phone. "He understands me. He sees my potential." She paused, then twisted the knife. "I've already emptied our shared investment account. My lawyer said it was the smart move. The joint account we'd built over 12 years of marriage. The one she rarely checked, but enjoyed the benefits of." "I understand," I said quietly. "That's it? You understand?" Her voice cracked slightly, the first genuine emotion in the conversation. "Take care, Melanie." I ended the call and set my phone face down on the counter. Then I opened my laptop and logged into our financial portal. She'd initiated a transfer, all right. $212,000 from what she thought was our main investment fund. What appeared on my screen confirmed what I already knew. The transfer was pending approval. My approval. I closed the laptop without taking action. 6 months earlier, I'd noticed the first signs. Weekend conferences that didn't appear on her company calendar. Dinner charges in downtown Denver on nights she was supposedly out of town. A missed call from Russell at 11 p.m. that she scrambled to explain away. Being a numbers guy has its advantages. You notice patterns. You plan ahead. 3 months ago, I'd restructured our accounts, creating a new joint account with a modest balance while quietly moving our real assets into a separate trust. The paperwork sat in my desk drawer, signed by Melanie without her ever reading the details. She'd been too busy texting under the table. The system was working exactly as designed. The withdrawal she'd initiated required dual authentication for amounts over $10,000, a safeguard I'd specifically requested. Tomorrow morning she'd discover what pending really meant. Melanie and I met 17 years ago at a financial conference in Chicago. She worked for Lunara Ventures Pharmaceuticals, a rising company with a promising pipeline of drugs. She was ambitious, sharp, and knew how to work a room. I was quiet, analytical, and noticed details others missed. We balanced each other. When we married 2 years later, we mapped out our future with the same precision I used for my clients' portfolios. Weekend hikes in the mountains, dinner parties with colleagues, a schedule for building our investment accounts, children by year 5. But the children never came. After 3 years of trying, the doctor's verdict was delivered in his sterile office. My low sperm count made natural conception unlikely. Melanie cried in the car afterward. I held her hand and promised we'd explore other options. We never did. Instead, she threw herself into her career. More conferences, more client dinners, more late nights. I focused on growing my client list at Veltri, building a reputation for steady, unflashy returns that outlasted market volatility. Our home became a way station between her trips and my long hours at the office. The first real crack appeared 3 years ago. I'd planned a weekend in Aspen for our anniversary. When I told her, she hesitated before saying she'd already committed to a sales retreat that same weekend. "I can't just cancel, Grant. This is with the executive team." I went alone and hiked the trails we'd once enjoyed together. When she called that night, I could hear laughter and music in the background. More cracks followed. Separate vacations became normal. Conversations shortened to logistics about the house or bills. Physical intimacy dwindled to occasional perfunctory encounters that felt like items checked off a list. Then came Russell Phillips, her new regional director. Suddenly, Melanie was volunteering for every committee, every conference, every special project that might cross his desk. "He values my input," she'd say. "He thinks I'm being wasted in my current role." I noticed the change in her texts and emails, always keeping her phone face down, stepping outside for calls, password-protecting folders on her laptop. Classic signs I'd seen in other failing marriages but never expected in my own. I didn't confront her. Instead, I watched, counted, and quietly prepared. And I documented the patterns in a spreadsheet. Dates of mysterious charges, locations that didn't match her stated itinerary, withdrawals from our accounts that exceeded our agreed spending limits. When she left her email open one morning, and I saw the hotel confirmation for a room in her name and Russell's, I didn't say a word. I simply adjusted my plans. The morning after her call, I sat in my home office, staring at the transfer request still blinking on my screen. $212,000 pending approval. With one click I could deny it. With another I could approve it and watch her walk away with nearly everything I had built. I did neither. Instead, I pulled the folder I'd prepared 3 months earlier. Inside was the complete documentation of our financial restructuring. The new trust in my name alone contained $870,000, the bulk of our investments, now legally separated from the joint account she thought she'd emptied. The doorbell rang. On my porch stood Vanessa, Melanie's closest friend and colleague at Lunara. Her face was tight, uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, leading her to the kitchen where I poured coffee neither of us would drink. "She told me to come get some of her things," Vanessa said, clutching her purse strap. "She's not coming back, Grant." "I know." Vanessa's eyes wouldn't meet mine. "She asked me to get her jewelry box from the bedroom. And her winter clothes." "You know about Russell," I said. "Not a question." Vanessa flinched. I tried to talk her out of it, but she wouldn't listen. "How long?" 8 months, maybe longer. She finally looked at me. "I'm sorry." 8 months. Nearly a year of lies, all while she slept beside me, discussed house renovations, planned holidays. "The jewelry's in the safe," I said. "She knows the combination. Always has." Vanessa didn't move. She also wanted me to check if her transfer went through. There it was. The real reason for the visit. Not clothes or jewelry, but money. I opened my laptop, turned it so she could see the screen. "Pending approval," I said quietly. "Dual authentication for amounts over $10,000. It's in our agreement." "She'll be furious," Vanessa whispered. "That's her choice." After Vanessa left with a suitcase of designer clothes but no financial confirmation, I drove to my office at Veltri. The familiar routine of client calls and portfolio reviews felt suddenly hollow. At lunch, I walked to my bank and initiated the next phase of my plan. By 3 o'clock, my phone had 7 missed calls from Melanie. I ignored them all and drove to my lawyer's office. Thomas had been my client for a decade before becoming my friend. He reviewed the documents I'd brought, bank statements showing Melanie's attempted withdrawal, credit card records revealing doubled expenses in cities that matched her boss's travel itinerary, hotel confirmations sent to her personal email. "This is more than enough," Thomas said, sliding the papers into a folder. "We'll file first thing tomorrow, financial misconduct, marital abandonment. Colorado doesn't require fault for divorce, but these will matter for the financial settlement." I nodded, feeling a strange hollowness where rage should have been. This wasn't about revenge. It was about mathematics. Every action has consequences, a principle I'd built my career on. "She thinks she emptied our accounts," I said. "Let her keep thinking that for now." 3 days passed without me answering Melanie's increasingly frantic calls. On the 4th day, I returned home to find her standing in our living room. She'd used her key, the one she hadn't bothered to leave behind when she declared our marriage over. "What did you do?" she demanded, her carefully applied makeup contrasting with the wildness in her eyes. "The money is gone." I set my briefcase down calmly. No, Melanie. The money isn't gone. It's exactly where it's supposed to be. She thrust her phone at me, showing the bank's message. Transfer denied. Dual authorization required. Fix this, she said. Now. I walked past her to the kitchen, poured a glass of water. We need to talk about the divorce. Divorce? I haven't even... She stopped herself. I meant to discuss that after I got settled. After you took the money, I clarified. Her face hardened. Half of that money is mine. I earned it. Did Russell tell you that? I asked quietly. The color drained from her face. This isn't about him. It's about trust, Melanie, and legally binding financial agreements. She changed tactics, her voice softening. I was emotional. I didn't mean to end things like that. We should talk about this properly. The sudden shift to conciliation. This was the Melanie who closed difficult sales, who convinced reluctant doctors to switch prescriptions. I'd watched her perfect this technique over years of dinner parties. Thomas Wilson is handling the divorce, I said. You can have your lawyer contact him. Her eyes narrowed. You already have a lawyer? Filed yesterday morning. She paced the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor she'd insisted on installing last year. You can't just lock me out of our money, Grant. I'll fight this. As is your right. My calm seemed to infuriate her more than argument would have. She grabbed a framed photo from our mantel, us in Aspen before the separate vacations began, and hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered across the floor. Russell was right about you, she hissed. You're pathetic. No ambition, no backbone. I looked at the broken frame, the spider-webbed glass over my smiling face. I'll need your key back. This isn't over, she said, digging in her purse and throwing the key onto the coffee table. Not even close. After she stormed out, I swept up the broken glass, careful to get every shard. Then I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and made a call. She came to the house, I told Thomas. Expected, he said. The bank notified her about the transfer rejection? Yes, she wants access to our money. Thomas chuckled. Good luck with that. The trust is ironclad. The next morning, my assistant at Veltri placed a letter on my desk. From Melanie's lawyer, Carlton Hayes. The firm's letterhead showcased downtown offices and 3 named partners. The letter demanded immediate release of jointly held marital assets and threatened legal action for financial abuse and restraint of rightful access to shared property. I scanned to the bottom, noting that Russell Phillips was copied on the correspondence. So her boss was directly involved now, using his connections to pressure me. That afternoon, Thomas filed our amended divorce petition, adding documentation of Melanie's attempt to empty the accounts without consultation, along with a request for a temporary restraining order preventing her from entering our home again. They think you're the weak one, Thomas said over the phone. That's good. Let them underestimate you. I didn't respond to the lawyer's letter. Instead, I waited for their next move, knowing they'd only strengthen my position with each aggressive step. In financial planning, patience is more than a virtue. It's a strategy. 2 weeks later, I received a text from an unknown number. Coffee? Important information about M. Fairvale Cafe, 2 p.m. today. Curiosity overcame caution. At the appointed time, I sat in the back corner of the cafe, watching the door. 10 minutes later, a woman in a tailored suit entered, scanning the room until she spotted me. Jessica Harlow, Lunara's HR director. We'd met at company functions over the years, exchanged pleasantries about market trends and Denver's weather. Now she sat across from me, ordered nothing, and placed a thumb drive on the table. I can't be seen with you, she said quietly. This conversation never happened. What's on the drive? Emails, between Russell and Melanie, going back 14 months. I kept my expression neutral. Why are you doing this? She glanced around before answering. Russell's done this before. 3 times that I know of. Pursues married women who report to him, convinces them to leave their husbands, promises promotions. Once they've burned their bridges, he discards them. And Lunara allows this? Jessica's mouth tightened. His father sits on the board, but there's more at stake now. These emails discuss confidential product information that was later shared with competitors. The implications settled coldly. Industrial espionage. She nodded. Russell's been selling research data, using Melanie to access files she shouldn't have. The FBI is already investigating, but quietly. And Melanie? Either complicit or manipulated. I don't know which. Jessica stood. I should go. Use that information however you need to. After she left, I ordered coffee and plugged the drive into my laptop. The emails confirmed everything. The affair, the plans to leave me, Russell's promises of promotion and relocation to Miami. But the industrial espionage angle was new. Screenshots showed Melanie accessing research databases after hours, forwarding proprietary information to Russell's personal email. Whether she knew what he was doing with it remained unclear. One exchange from 3 months ago caught my attention. Russell, once you're free from the accountant, we'll move forward with everything. Miami office, director title, the works. Melanie, what about his financial expertise? Could be useful. Russell, trust me, we don't need him. Just get what you can from the accounts and we'll handle the rest. They'd planned to use me, then discard me. And Melanie had considered leveraging my financial knowledge before Russell dismissed the idea. I copied the files, then drove directly to Thomas's office. He reviewed the emails while I stared out his window at the mountains in the distance. This changes things, he said finally. The industrial espionage angle could trigger criminal charges. I don't want her in prison, I said, surprising myself with the realization. I just want out. Then we use this as leverage. She backs off the financial claims, signs the divorce agreement on our terms, and we don't share this with the FBI. And Russell? Thomas raised an eyebrow. You still care what happens to him? No, I said, but I care what happens next. That evening, I received a formal settlement offer from Melanie's lawyer. She wanted 60% of all marital assets, the house, and ongoing alimony. I forwarded it to Thomas with a single line. Time to use the thumb drive. The next day, Thomas sent a counter-proposal. Melanie would relinquish all claims to the trust, accept a one-time settlement of $50,000, and sign a non-disclosure agreement about both the marriage and her activities at Lunara. Attached was a single email from the thumb drive, enough to demonstrate what we had, not enough to show our full hand. Her lawyer's response came within hours. We need to meet. The meeting was set for Thomas's office. I arrived early, reviewed our strategy, and waited in the conference room. When Melanie entered with her lawyer Carlton Hayes, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Hayes, a silver-haired man with an expensive suit and practiced smile, spoke first. We appreciate your willingness to discuss a reasonable settlement. Thomas slid copies of our proposal across the table. Our terms are non-negotiable. Hayes scanned the document, his smile fading. This is absurd. Your client is offering practically nothing. My client is offering silence, Thomas countered, which, given the circumstances, is quite valuable. Melanie finally looked at me, her expression a mixture of anger and fear. You're blackmailing me. No, I said quietly. I'm protecting myself. Thomas opened a folder and removed printed copies of selected emails. He placed them precisely before Hayes, who read them with growing discomfort. These are private communications, he objected. These are evidence of corporate espionage, Thomas corrected, which federal prosecutors would find extremely interesting. Melanie's composure cracked. You don't understand. Russell said it was just market research, nothing illegal. Yet you accessed secure databases after hours and forwarded confidential information to his personal email, I said. Hayes leaned toward Melanie, whispering urgently. She shook her head several times before he turned back to us. We need to confer privately. Thomas nodded. Take all the time you need. The FBI certainly will. They left the room, and Thomas gave me an approving nod. You're holding up well. This isn't how I expected my marriage to end, I admitted. 20 minutes later, they returned. Hayes looked resigned. My client is prepared to accept your terms, with one modification. She wants assurance that you won't forward these emails to Lunara or any law enforcement agency. Thomas looked at me. I considered Melanie, sitting across from me, the woman I'd once built a life with. Whatever she'd done, sending her to prison wouldn't undo the betrayal. Agreed, I said. Provided the agreement is signed today and the divorce processed without further contest. Hayes nodded. We'll need to review the final language. Already prepared, Thomas said, producing the documents. 2 hours later, it was done. Melanie signed away her claims to our assets in exchange for $50,000 and my silence. The house would be sold, with proceeds going to my trust. No alimony, no further contact. As she stood to leave, Melanie paused. Was any of it real for you? The question caught me off guard. All of it was real for me, I answered truthfully. That was the difference between us. After they left, Thomas shook my hand. Congratulations. You'll be officially divorced in 90 days. I nodded, feeling hollow despite the victory. What about Russell? Not our problem, Thomas started, but stopped when he saw my expression. What are you thinking? That Lunara deserves to know what kind of man they have running their sales department. I tapped the thumb drive. Even if Melanie gets immunity. Thomas considered this. Technically, our agreement only prevents you from reporting this. It doesn't cover anonymous tips. That evening, I created a new email account and carefully selected key documents from the thumb drive. Only those showing Russell's actions, nothing incriminating Melanie directly. I sent them to Lunara's CEO, board members, and compliance department, then permanently deleted the account. 3 days later, the business section of the Denver Post ran a small article. Pharmaceutical executive resigns amid internal investigation. Russell Phillips had left Lunara Ventures effective immediately. No official reason was given. Melanie texted me once. I know it was you. I didn't respond. Some equations balanced themselves. 6 weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. Thomas handed me a copy of Melanie's new employment agreement, secured through his network of corporate contacts. She'd taken a position with a small pharmaceutical distributor in Phoenix. Entry-level sales, significant pay cut, no corner office. Russell was reportedly in Miami, but unemployed and under federal investigation. She had to sell her car to make rent, Thomas commented. The $50,000 won't last long at her previous spending rate. I felt no satisfaction at this news, just a dull acknowledgement of financial reality. Actions and consequences. That afternoon, I received a certified letter from Lunara Ventures. The internal investigation had uncovered my anonymous tip. Rather than pursue legal action against me for accessing their proprietary information through the thumb drive, they were offering me a consulting position with their financial compliance department. We believe your expertise and ethical standards would be an asset to our organization during this restructuring period, the letter read. Jessica Harlow had signed it personally, adding a handwritten note. Justice comes in unexpected forms. I accepted the offer the following day. 2 months after finalizing the divorce, I received an unexpected email from Vanessa, Melanie's former friend. Grant, I thought you should know that Melanie and Russell have separated. He never followed through on any of his promises. She's struggling, but too proud to admit it. She asked about you, whether you were seeing anyone new. I told her I wouldn't discuss your life with her. Just thought you should know. Take care, V. I closed the email without responding. The justice wasn't in Melanie's downfall or my financial security. It was in the quiet restoration of truth, the numbers finally balancing as they should have all along. The revenge wasn't in taking something from her, but in finally recognizing my own worth. 1 year after Melanie's late-night call from Miami, I stood in the foyer of my new home in the Denver suburbs. Smaller than our previous house, but solely mine, with a view of the mountains from the back deck. The consulting work with Lunara had evolved into a full-time position, heading their new financial compliance division. I'd built a team dedicated to transparency and ethical oversight, work that mattered beyond just growing wealth. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine, a corporate attorney I'd met through the Lunara legal department. Our third date was scheduled for tonight. Dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown where we could continue our conversation about hiking trails and financial regulation. Topics that would have bored Melanie to tears, but that Catherine found as engaging as I did. I hadn't heard from Melanie in months. Through mutual connections, I knew she'd left the pharmaceutical industry entirely, taking a teaching position at a community college in Arizona. A simpler life than she'd planned, but perhaps a more honest one. As I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I realized the hollow feeling had finally disappeared. The betrayal no longer defined me. It had simply become part of my history, a painful chapter that had eventually led to something better. I locked the door behind me and walked to my car. The trust fund that Melanie had tried to empty now funded scholarships for students pursuing financial ethics certifications. A small way of transforming what was meant to harm into something constructive. The mountains loomed ahead, solid and unchanging as I drove toward the city. Some things could be counted on. Some calculations always balanced in the end. I had been right about the numbers all along, but more importantly, I'd finally gotten the human equation right as well.